Cliff, we are also recording too, right? Yes, we are. That guy's awesome. Everybody put a 5 in the chat box for Cliff Mast, who is awesome. Hey, it is my absolute delight and pleasure to have the opportunity to introduce to you Dr. Wayne Scott Anderson. Now, some of you know him very well because he's been your mentor too for a while. But for some of you, you just hopped onto this webinar because, well, you were stuck at home and somebody told you ought to come and hear. So you may not have had the opportunity to meet him yet. Dr. A is my business mentor. He's the co-founder of our company. But his background is as a physician, well-trained in critical care. He was the 10th board certified critical care physician in the country, helped to pioneer the subspecialty of critical care. And actually, if we have time today, I'd love to have him share a little bit of that story too. But left that very successful career because he wanted to help people create health. And Dr. A, just before you were hopping on, we were talking about the fact that this program is comprehensive. Yes, we can help people lose weight. I mean, they heard Brittany's story. They know that we know how to lose weight here. But I was also talking about the fact that this past week with this team, because they have learned some emotional resilience, they navigated the challenges of this week pretty well. And well, tell me this, Dr. A, do you have anything you'd like to say at the beginning? Because I got questions all lined up for you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, hi, everybody. How's everybody today? Kind of wave at me so I can see you. Cool. So I'll show you. I'm coming from my beach house.
It's a beautiful thing. Oh, and you got yourself muted on the way back around. There you go.
Okay. So yeah, it's one of those beautiful things. And when we take a moment and look at it in nature, and all of a sudden, all those problems and things I heard you talking about earlier, Shirley, kind of go away, don't they? We have this thing called fear, and it's one of the basic human emotions. And certainly it's permeating throughout our society and throughout the world this last week. As Americans, we live pretty blessed lives, and our economic levels and our the way our world is set up, we have pretty much what we think is an illusion of security. And at a time like this, for most people, because they just don't feel that kind of stress, like you said, it's a tough thing for them. And so what's really nice is the Optavia community is a place where we hang out together, we kind of support each other, we talk over our issues, and we help other people join us over time. And so this is actually, people were saying, well, how's this going to affect our business? Well, I actually think, I don't know how many of you, if you know me, I'm a movie goer, and I love movies. I don't watch TV, but I love movies as an escape. And the movie Apollo 13, in the middle, Ed Harris is talking. He was the command center at Houston. And in the middle, they were talking about this could be the biggest disaster ever in the history of the space program. And he said, no, it could be our biggest victory. And that's kind of how I look at it, is that right now, people are starting to realize, number one, that they need to take care of their health. Number two, they need to stay at home. They don't really want to go into a place where the vector can spread rapidly. And it's a great time for us to really expose people to Optavia. It's like our best time, and it's a time, as Shirley was alluding to. I want to make one little tweak, Shirley, on what you said. It's not they're going to have the stress, but how they respond to it. It's that they have the stimulus. It's how they respond to the stimulus. And if you've actually worked on this, you don't get the stress. So I will tell you that this week I was up, as you know, last week we were ringing the bell, and I was talking to the health editors in New York, and they're blown away by what we're doing. But I had to get on a plane on Wednesday and come down here. And, when I got on the plane, I realized, okay, I'm going into a vector-rich zone, and I need to be cautious. So I thought, what are the things I need to do? I need to make sure I don't touch things. I need to make sure that I sit in the window seat and put the air on and blow it so it's blowing the air away from me, right? And that's it. And then I sat there and read a book and caught up on some things and didn't get stressed at all. Because here's the point. The point in life is that it's how we respond to the events that happen in our life that really matter. And what we do in Optavia is we recognize and realize that we're in an environment where we're optimizing our health. And, for all of you on today, one of the things I would start off with is yourself. If right now you needed some motivation, hey, you got the motivation. Get healthy, get as healthy as you can be, and set the example for others. So that's the first thing. And, like everything else, life is a complex tapestry. There's a lot of things that go on, but what we can do, and we can't control those things. We can't control COVID-19 or COVID-20 that's coming. But what we can do is we can set our life up first to create the emotional resilience so that we can adapt to these things and not sit there and over worry. You know, one of the things to recognize, just like the emotion of fear, is okay. Yeah, it's a tight time. When I went to Publix, hey, I'm shopping for myself these days. I went to Publix, and you know, I was more cautious because I was around a bunch of people. When I'm in my home, I'm fully relaxed. I'm not worrying about it. I'm not watching TV every 5 minutes, sitting there building and feeding into that cognitive emotive loop that gets me stressed out, because it's of no help. In fact, if you've read the piece I put out earlier this week, when we're stressed or worry, we affect our immune system in a negative fashion. So we want to make sure we're equipping, and we're using the sense right here. And we're going to talk about, I know Shirley's got a whole bunch of questions today, but bottom line is what we're doing is we're taking responsibility for our lives. We're not being victims. We're not letting the hysteria that's, that you can sit there and say, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. None of that is really true. What is true is that we need to take every precaution necessary, but at the same time, we need to thrive in our lives. And what the second part is, you may have already heard, the Business Momentum event in the iLab, because of this, just like most of the major events, is being changed and modified. So we're doing Business Momentum now. We're doing it coming into your homes, and rather than you coming to Miami. And we're going to make that adaptation. We're making it like that because we're that agile. We're taking our emotions and saying, okay, if we can provide, what do we need to provide? We need to equip you guys to be just like you're doing today. You know, Shirley and Cliff had to make modifications. They got a new facility, and then obviously it came to this where they're on digital online. But that agility is what allows us to adapt and make ourselves thrive at a time when everything's changing. And it's going to change like that. And if you can build in that muscle, that mental muscle, and hopefully Shirley's going to have a bunch of questions around that today, is that all of a sudden, hey, I'm not stressed at all. And the stock market took a dump, and that's okay. You know, those things will correct themselves. We have to learn very, 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 very soon how to adjust to change, because that will be the one thing that will be common for all of us. And the good thing about that, as you adjust to change, you're going to be in position to help others do that. And when you empower people to be adaptable like that and adapt to change, man, everything changes for people. Because right now, everything is fear-based. And when you're fear-based, there's no silver lining. And we're about the silver lining, the lining that as humans, hey, you know, I was walking down the beach yesterday, went for a walk because I like to get in my 10,000 steps, which is a habit of health. And I was watching creatures, you know, different creatures, a crab, a little sandpiper, a little midget sandpiper about this big, and just working to feed itself, right? We're no different than that. We've got this illusion that everything is perfect. What we've got to do is adapt our brain. You know, we spend so much time working on our bodies, hopefully you're working on your bodies and going to the gym, but very few people go to the mental gym. And the mental gym is probably even more important than the physical gym, because the mental gym puts you in position to really become the dominant force in your own life and then help others do the same. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because most people, the sky is falling right now, and actually it's not falling. In fact, I look at it, obviously we don't want anybody to be hurt or to get sick, but it's a curious time. It's a time to how can we adapt to this and use this to help Optavia and help our own lives become better. So go for it, Shirley.
Yeah, well, I think that's has been one of the gifts of Optavia, and one of the things that you taught me years ago was the idea of, you know, when you're feeling stressed out, to stay curious, to stay open, because then it does allow you to be resourceful. And so I'll say this, Doctor, I mean, thank you for that. This past week, I navigated in a way that I would have never done 10 years ago. I'd have been too busy freaking out about stuff to be able to stay open and curious and creative.
And you'd be eating a bunch of stuff.
Oh, that absolutely. Yes, indeed. Goes without saying. Talk to me about this. So if you have, let's say there's people on the call that they're saying, yeah, okay, I get it that I shouldn't let fear run the show, but it is kind of running the show for me right now. And you made a reference to go into the mental gym. If I was going to go to that mental gym this week, what would I do there?
Okay, that's a great question. So the first thing, the most important thing is 95%. And obviously there's people on the line today that are all different levels of the business. Some of them have been with us a while, some of them are just getting started. But what I would start off by saying is that most people are sleepwalking through life. They're letting their thoughts control their life. And they think in the center is this thing called self that's just kind of this running the whole show. The reality is this. The reality is that you always have a choice. What we do, unfortunately, like, you know, when you were going back like years ago before you started studying this and really becoming a, you know, a conscious leader, is that you would have a stimulus, something bad happened, and you immediately start eating because that was the way you could kind of for a moment feel a bit of pleasure, right? The reality is that's a programmed response because the body doesn't want to be stressed out. It wants to have resolution. But what we have is this thing called the gap between stimulus and response. And when we can actually stop, challenge why we're feeling that way, and choose an outcome that supports our health, because let's just give an example. Whatever it is that you go to, whatever your go-to distraction is, whether it's, you know, it could be food, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it can be gambling, you know, a whole gamut of things that people go to escape. Whatever it is, it never brings you satisfaction. It may bring you a moment of pleasure, but in the end run, what it does is after you've done that, whatever that is, whether it's eating a hot fudge sundae, right, or drinking too much, what it does is then you say, oh my God, I'm worthless. And you start beating yourself up. So the end result of that is you just dig that hole deeper. The reality is if we just stop and challenge, what do we want in our life? Well, we want to thrive. You know, I mean, I basically started heli skiing about 4 years ago, and I went a couple weeks ago. I didn't go heli skiing. I went to Vail with my ski instructor, but just the two of us, and we went back and did stuff that 5 years ago I couldn't have done. And I can do it now because I'm taking care of myself and I'm getting myself in great shape, and it brings amazing joy. That's what we need to do. We need to think, what are the things that most important, whether it's our family, sports, traveling, whatever it is we love to do, is that creates long-lasting satisfaction. And satisfaction is something by definition, as I like to define it, that lasts longer than when you actually did it. So if you go out and work out in the morning, if you worked out this morning, it'll last you throughout your day. You'll have better mental clarity. You'll basically, you'll be able to have more energy, and you're going to feel better throughout the day. So it lasts way beyond when you did it. So one of those things is first just becoming self-aware. That in itself, that's where you should start, because we're usually letting our mind kind of control our day, and we're on automatic pilot. You know, as an example, when you drive your car and you go somewhere and you're talking on the phone or whatever, and then all of a sudden you realize you're at your garage and, oh, I'm home. I got to click the garage door opener and let the car in. How did you get here? You really, honestly, you did that automatically. And that's how we kind of run our days. We let the story that we've had from the past kind of run our life. This is the way we are. This is what we do. And actually, nothing could be further from the truth. We have the ability to fully become the dominant force in our own life, but it starts with little baby steps. So, as you know, in the Habits of Health Transformational System, I talk about micro habits. So and the thing with a habit installation requires, the most important thing of a habit installation is that you do it every day, because that creates consistency. And the way the brain works, and I won't get into the physiology, but there's a small area in the base of our brain called the basal ganglia. And what it does is it takes information, it chunks it together, connects that loop, so now we can do things automatically. So we do a lot of things, and you know, you might unconsciously do something that you've done since you were a little kid. Like, you know, when I was little, I remember eat everything on your plate. You know, you were told that because, you know, there's poor, starving kids in Africa. And we used to always kid around and say, well, to my parents, well, send it to them, right? Anyway, that discussion, the older guys on the line, the young millennials don't have any idea what I'm talking about. But the point is, now energy dense food is everywhere. So you have to change that habit. I have another one like that. This is one that's tough for me to break because it's so ingrained in my basal ganglia. And that is, as a critical care physician in training, I spent, you know, did an internship, 2 residencies, 2 fellowships. And when someone was sick and someone was dying, they would beep you and you had to run right then. And so we had to go down to the cafeteria. So you ate like in 1.3 seconds your whole food, because if you didn't, then you didn't get to eat, because then you're back in the ICU and then the cafeteria would close. So I ingrained this habit of eating fast, and there's nothing that's worse for you than eating fast. So I have to basically, when I sit down now, I have to stop, challenge myself, and say, okay, eat this slow, taste the food, chew it more times, and that's a micro habit for me. So I chew 15 times. And so that's how I overcome that, right? Does that make sense? So that's how everything should be. So in the idea of the mental gym, no, you're not going to like take over your thought process like that. It's going to require time. It's going to require a lot of time. But I can tell you, I will tell you this, in the last 5 years, the work I've done personally and I've written about on improving your ability to control what you're thinking and be able to create that space is more important than anything else. This is a great week. During this week, and I tell you, and this is not me exaggerating, during this week, and despite, you know, things happening both financially and obviously I've been on the video conferencing with the company all week, figuring out what we were going to do with iLat, then figuring out with my co-creators of the Business Momentum, all this stuff and all these other things going on, traveling. I have to say that I'm as calm this week as I was last week before this happened, because I've learned that. And there's nothing you can do more than eliminate your mental suffering. So it's a really important part. And what it does is it allows you to take command and control of your life. So it's a long answer to a short question, Shirley, but it starts with just, I would start with getting your app out and just starting to use Stop, Challenge, and Choose.
That's really helpful. You could take all the time you want to explain these. I'm good with this. and I'm just so grateful that you were able to make time for this today, because I know you had about 843 things on your plate this week.
No, there's nothing more important. Listen, for me, honestly, this is the most important thing. You know, if someone on the line today, whether it's Sarah or Tony or Deborah, whoever it is, if this can just give you that one little boom to start it into motion, then it's well worth it to me. Because, you know, I was thinking this week, you know, as the nation is completely consumed with fear, this is our time, and we need you guys to step up. And so to get on the line with, you know, you guys today and be able to talk about this and answer your questions, wow, that's really what matters most.
Well, I think it's one of the things, and actually I'll mention this to you guys if you need to type, but because I think the room is of the size that if you have a follow-up question on this, put it into the chat box. And I mean, we may not be able to answer all of them, but I'm happy to accommodate that as much as we can. But the one thing I had said to the team this week was, you know, we always talk about Optavia coaches and even our clients. And I realize there's people on here that aren't even clients yet. You're still kind of checking this out. But Optavia coaches tend to stick out when they're in a larger group, because we do tend to be a positive force. We tend to look at things differently. And the thing that I said to the team is, I think that in this season, as we're practicing habits of healthy mind, that what will stick out about these coaches is the fact that everybody else is going crazy, and yet these Optavia coaches are still staying focused. They're not getting themselves bent out of shape, and it becomes a really compelling message to the world around us, I think. And it's because of what you've taught us, Dr. A. I'm just really grateful for that.
Yeah, and it's really about, thank you, Shirley, but it's really about becoming, and I just, you know, flashed in my mind. So I went to, you know, in Florida, Publix is the major grocery store, and I went there a couple days ago to get some groceries, because I hadn't been in my house in a while. And as I was leaving, and it was at night, and there was no one around, there was a plastic bag that had in the parking lot. It was laying on the ground, and you know, I put my stuff in the car, and I went back and picked it up. Why? Because that's the right thing to do. It's a simple little thing, but when you actually awaken yourself to the possibilities of doing the right things and helping people, it absolutely empowers you way beyond. You know, that little thing didn't matter to anybody. I didn't look around to see an audience to clap. I did it because it was the right thing to do. And that's kind of the essence of who we are at a time when people are absorbed with their own fear, is to be able to kind of reach out, and we can't give a hand anymore, but we can elbow bump, is that it allows us to truly lead. It allows us to set the stage and to create the calm for everyone else. And I will tell you that it will help you as well in your business. You know, Jim Rohn 4 decades ago said, if you bring value to the marketplace, you should be compensated for that. And that's what we are. The beauty of an Optavia leader, and you're all Optavia leaders. You may not think you are yet, but as soon as you help your first client, you become a leader. You're leading others. And leader comes, from the word which means pathfinder. It means leading people, showing them the way to a better health and better life. And that's what we do. And in its smallest form, basically, first of all, be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. The thing is, just by reaching out and being empathetic, we're setting a stage for a movement. This movement's going to change the world. And you guys are part of it. And hopefully you'll go after it with a zeal and know. And remember, it's not about, I'll just give you one other example. So I was talking to a physician that's actually now, they just went global director. And they basically were talking about, listen, can we go out and talk about how we can help? I said, no, that's not your job. That's my job. My job as the co-founder and kind of the visionary is to create videos and to do things that you can share. Your job is to ask questions. So if I had to put it into perspective, we talk about, one of the things we've been talking about on our TLTP is our planets. Each and every one of us comes from our own planet. And so what we want to do is, rather than from the perspective that life on our planet is how it should be on everybody else's planet, what we should do is realize that every other person is on their own planet. And what we want to do is become curious, what's life like on their planet? Not from our perspective, not from our planet, but from their planet. And if we just simply ask questions to people and sit there and embrace and make sure we're listening, we set a stage at a time, especially even now more than ever, where people are going to go, wow, this person really is listening to me and cares about me. And they're going to be curious, and they're going to want to know what you do and how you can help them. So again, going back to sell and tell versus share and care. We share and care, this incredible thing we're doing with everybody that we come in contact with, and now at a time when there's social distancing, we can help so many people become aware that there is a better way for them.
Well, exactly. And the thing is, even with the social distancing, it doesn't change anything about what we do as coaches. Most of the contacts that I make are virtual, they're by phone. Yep. And I think it will end up being actually some of the gift of this time is that the relationships will become very valuable, and relationships are what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
Once I realized in this business that the better I got at building relationships, the more people I was able to help, like that lit a fire under me. And it's like, so really all I got to do is go out and love people? Cool, I can do that.
Yeah, no, and let's talk just for a moment about relational attachment. So, one of the things that I spend a lot of time talking about and aim to stay is intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is if we ask questions and we're autonomy supportive and we awaken other people, we put them in the best position. But Jim Defner, who's one of the top leaders in the world, and we've become very good friends, and I actually personally mentor with him. I asked him to personally mentor me, so he mentors me, because everybody needs a mentor, by the way. Don't think you can do it alone, especially at a time like this. Because you know what? You have what we call in medicine a scotoma, or blind spot. You have blind spots that you can't see. Your story encompasses you, and you think that's your story, but there's things beyond that you need help with. We all need that. So please make sure you have a mentor that you're working with. But Jim talks about beyond intrinsic motivation, there's two even higher levels of relational health. And the next one is fun, having fun. If you know me and you've seen me at conferences and stuff, I love to have fun. I find that laughter and banter and kidding around with each other and, is fun. And it connects us at a very positive level relationally. And then the highest level is agape love. It's actually where we care beyond, it's like there's right now, I forgot what insurance company or something that has it on. I love that they're talking about the 4 types of love. And the agape love, they show taking care of somebody, like going to a nursing home and helping people, with that kind of love. And that's kind of who we are. And I love that that's who we are. The nice thing is we can provide for society at a time when everything is so pessimistic and people are all below the line in the drama triangle. We can provide an incredible environment for people, a safe house for people. Psychological safety, although there is no real security in life, psychological safety, feel that you're connected is really important. I was watching again, just think that, we are creatures, we're highly evolved creatures, but we're creatures. And I was watching a school of fish yesterday and they hang out together because they have some psychological security in that. They feel that somehow they're protected, and they are. Somebody on the outside is going to get it, but the rest of them aren't. And that's the kind of, with us, we provide that psychological security, and it's never been more powerful. So be proud of being, everybody on the line today, be proud of who you are and what you can create and how you can help others. Because when we give to others, that's the highest form of relational health. And it's when we really feel, and it creates fulfillment, involvement, and the things that really separate us from where most people are. Most people are isolated, and your point is absolutely valid. We can create that through a digital process such as this. The nice thing about it, you get all three things. You get tonality, you get posture, and you get the content. So you get all of it the same using Zoom. So Zoom's a great way to really conduct your business and be safe.
Yeah, well, I found myself really looking forward to that today, because it's like, I just want to be together with my people, and because this and well, Cameron talked about this on the previous, on the time leading up to this, we kind of did the essence of a trilogy call with people sharing their stories and talking about the community factor, and it's really, really powerful. I'd love to pivot if we could, just because I know we have people on this call for whom this is the first time they are meeting you, and some of our newer coaches might not be aware of this either. We've made the references to the fact that you worked for quite some time in the hospital, in a hospital setting. Would you be willing to tell a bit of your story of what brought you into medicine, and then what was it that made you decide that that was not the setting where you wanted to devote your life?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Shirley. I'd love to share. So the first thing, just as a reflection on that, I can tell you that this week, not being in the hospital, I obviously I love helping people, but I'm helping millions of people now versus 15 people in the ICU beds. And this week, just from my own personal vantage point, kind of glad I'm not in the hospital, right? So I just want to say that it's interesting how as you evolve your life, that you can actually, I did it for 20 years and I worked 100 hours a week. And so I did my share. It's kind of like being in the military. I did my time. But now I'm helping people get healthy. And so how that all started, well, it started that I always had a fantastic imagination and wanted to be a doctor since I was a little kid. I started dissecting when I lived in Spain I was in like the third or fourth grade. Our maid that took care of our house took me down, and because there were no rules back then, I got ether and surgical equipment and would put frogs to sleep and open up and watch their hearts beat. I was I was impatient. I didn't want to wait to have to go to medical school to start exploring. So that's where it started, and I just loved it. And then when I went to medical school and went into practice, and I really liked the idea. And it's actually what's led to the Habits Health Transformational System is this idea of integration, that the parts, together are more important when they're whole than they are individually. And, my friends would go into internal medicine or pulmonology for the lungs or cardiology for the heart. And I said, there's got to be a better way, because I noticed in the ICU that these very sick people, that the doctors would come in from their specialty and they would look at one part of the body, but they weren't really looking at the whole. So fortunately, I was able to help pioneer this idea of critical care, which was that we looked at the whole patient, this very sick patient, and we looked at him as a whole. We took care of him as a whole, what was best for the whole, not just for the individual organs. So basically, that was where it all started. And, I did that for 20 years. I ended up finding the love of my life, Lori, and I got married. We had little kids. And I realized more and more, my kids were like mannequins in their crib. I was working 100 hours a week. I noticed that I was starting to gain, I had, scrubs on. That's all I lived in were scrubs. So I noticed that, I was starting to get, because I put on some jeans, I noticed I was starting to gain some weight. And I realized that I was taking care of some of the same people over and over again, keep them from dying, but I never got anybody healthy. So I pioneered the specialty critical care, but in the back of my mind, in the late 1990s, beginning of 2000, I started writing at night, and Lori would come and say, what are you doing? And I was writing this plan about creating a bio network, about actually creating a community where people from the inside healed themselves and reached out and helped others. So by 2001, I just pretty much got to the breaking point where I just was not happy. And the other thing that happened, business came into medicine. And I care just like I care, today. I know you can tell and sense at my heart. My patients were the most important, and I had people in business calling me and telling me to get my patient out of the ICU when I knew it wasn't time for them to leave yet. And I was getting, I don't like, I'll work all day and all night, but I don't like people to tell me what to do. So I basically was getting disillusioned with traditional medicine. And I was one night I was in the ICU and they called me down to the ER. And because they knew that I was really good at putting lines in people, and they had a drug addict that had torn up all his veins, so they couldn't get access to him. So I was putting a line inside the chest, and the nurse stabbed me with a needle inadvertently. And I realized, that when I came home and saw the kids, that I might be dead in a year. Because hepatitis, AIDS, all these other things that when you have a needle stick, a hollow needle. And I just reflected, and it was kind of like the turning point. And I said, you know what? I want to go out and help people get healthy. Enough of this. So I left it, and people were blown. Where are you going? So I left, and I moved out to Oregon to some people I knew that were that wanted to build this organization. And I lived on credit cards for 2 years. I had no money. And that's how it all started. And I finally met Brad McDonald because I had heard about Medifast because I'd seen physicians that had used it in their practice. And I knew it was great for losing weight. I knew it didn't teach people to be healthy or eat healthy or lifestyle change, but I knew it would be a great nidus to get started and create the catalyst. And that's where it started. And over it's been almost 2 decades now. The question I've asked every day is, how do we help people create sustainable change? Not a diet, but how do we help people change? And I think we're getting closer and closer to that. And it's really about awakening. When you asked me about the mental gym, it's about awakening people to themselves and then realizing what they really want and then helping them with a system, with a guide, their coach to guide them, with a support community and with products and the Habits Health Transformational System. And that's where we are today. And I can tell you that people go, don't you miss being in the hospital? Well, certainly this week, the answer is absolutely no. And actually, I have to tell you, that when I go in hospitals, I lecture to a lot of doctors, I actually get an icky feeling when I go in a hospital because it's not the best way. I mean, listen, if you get hit by a car or you need an open heart operation, I have a good friend that needed to have an open heart operation this last week. Great. We do a great job of it. But for chronic disease, it's so much more important to move upstream and take control, help people take control of their own health and their own lives. So I don't know if that's what you wanted, but
that's awesome. Well, the level of deeply rewarding just escalates, doesn't it? I mean, Doctor, I used to work labor and delivery, and that's cool stuff. But this is transformative work. This is people coming to you and saying, "You've changed my life." Yeah. And I got to say personally, Dr. A, and I know you've heard me say this before, and you're going to hear me say it a lot more times. If you had not made that decision, I'm not sure that I would be here today, because the change that you made changed the trajectory of my life, not just in my health, but also, I don't know if you can see her, but that grandbaby of mine's over there clapping.
Start clapping. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, she's clapping.
I love that.
So I'm incredibly grateful. Hey, guys, if you have questions, put them into the chat box. But I did talk with the team ahead of time, and I said, okay, if you could ask Dr. A question, what would you want to ask? And there's some really good ones here. So, and are we okay if we go till 1, Dr. A?
Never. Listen, I'm here for you guys.
We might stay till 4.
I've got a beautiful breeze. I'm looking at this ocean. I have you fine folks with me. Listen, there's no place. And by the way, that is part of this. People go, God, you're like so enthusiastic. I've been doing this for 2 decades, and I have the enthusiasm of a little kid. Why? Because of you guys. Your stories fuel me every day. And I have to tell you that I have a lot of friends that were physicians with me in the same age. And they're all, it's like in the, going back to another movie, if you ever watched any of the Indiana Jones movies, there was the one where they looked for the chalice and the guy drank the wrong one and he chose poorly and he shriveled up. They all look like they drank from the wrong chalice. They all look like 20 years. None of them are healthy skiing, I can tell you that. And most of them are just counting the days so they can retire. And I get up every morning just re-enthused, by you guys about what we can do together. And, in a time like this, it's like, wow, we have the solution. It's almost like it's unfolding that Optavia and our coaches are in position to really become a dominant force in society as we move forward. It's pretty cool.
What's funny is you were talking about that. I thought, about like comparing yourself to your former colleagues and I thought, yes, there's something about being the dominant force. You talk a lot about becoming the dominant force in your life and the empowerment that comes with that, the way you're able to impact other people is amazing.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
and just before, again, going back
sure.
to everybody has the opportunity to do that. I want to make sure, listen, being a physician, people go, oh, you're a physician. Well, I came from a very poor family. I lived in a tenement house growing up in New York City. My father was a sergeant in the Air Force, but I just made a decision that I was going to become the dominant force in my life. And for all of you, that's a process. And so, whether you've worked for someone else and now it's your first time becoming an entrepreneur, what I mean by that, an independent person that's responsible for what you do through the day. Hey, become the CEO of your business. Work with your mentors. There's no reason why there's not. If I could sit down with each of you individually right here across from me, and we talked, there's not one of you that isn't capable of becoming everything you want to in Optavia, because there is such a need for what we are. You just have to stop focusing on making it about you and making it about what you want for yourself, for your life, for your family. I mean, it's so critical.
Yeah, and that's excellent. That's excellent. One of the questions that had come in, when we talk about this a lot in Optavia, about making a quality decision, I think it would be safe to say that when you left the hospital system, you made a quality decision. Can you talk about a little bit more about when we're talking about somebody making a quality decision for their health? Talk a little bit more about that and what does that mean? How does that play out for people?
Well, the reality is, and I use structural tension. Robert Fritz is a dear friend of mine.
Interestingly enough, that was the follow-up question.
Good. So Robert Fritz has been a dear friend of mine for a couple, almost 20 years now. And he created, in the creative process, he came from music, but in music and in the arts, which are pure, and they last, by the way, people don't remember much about Napoleon, but they certainly love to see a Monet, because art becomes timeless. It becomes such an incredible thing. If Mozart and or the Beatles, it doesn't matter who, but artists create art that lasts. It becomes timeless. And so the creative process is kind of like that. It's about focusing on what matters most to you. What's the desired outcome you have in your health? I mean, listen, I had a dear friend years ago that I met who was in direct sales. He had written several books and he got pancreatic cancer, and he was in great shape, by the way. He got pancreatic cancer. And I went out to see him when he was dying. And I actually did some Hyperal and took out some stuff. It probably wasn't totally legal, but I wanted to make him feel better because he wanted to spend time together. So kind of augmented him and gave him nutrition because he couldn't eat that well. And he felt better. And we walked the next day down to the park where he had young kids. And on the way down there, he said, you know what? The guy that said, or the girl that said, when you got your health, you got everything. Without it, you got nothing. He said they really nutted it. And this is a very successful guy, and that's really true. Our bodies are, what's his name? What's the country western guy that looks like he died?
Willie Nelson?
Willie Nelson, yeah. He said, if I knew I was going to live so long, I'd taken better care of myself. So when we lose our health, everything becomes a struggle, and physically we become a struggle. So our health is kind of the thing, and obviously your mind is even more important, but basically taking care of your health is important. So we need to make that a priority. So if we desire optimal health, and that's why people go to me, well, how can you talk about optimal health when I'm 100 pounds overweight? Because we want to set the bar where you really want. What you don't want is just to lose 50 pounds. You do want to be optimally healthy. Now, whether you think you can do it or not, basically doesn't matter. You don't have to believe in gravity, right? But if you get on top of this building and you jump off, man, gravity's going to take hold and you're going to get smushed. So you don't have to, just like when you did that first fueling, it didn't matter if you believed it was going to change your life. And Shirley, when you started many years ago, like what, 7, 8 years ago?
10.
10 years. Wow. 10 years
ago.
Yeah,
it's an 8-year anniversary this month.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, you didn't know that you were going to be sitting here today now leading a tremendous team of people and helping change the world.
Would have never believed it.
Opening that first fueling, taking it, hoping at that time that it was going to work. but you trusted Lori and you
Yep.
talked to Lori, and basically she coached you and she kind of put that confidence in you before you even had it. So that's where we are right now. That's where everybody on the line, that's where the quality decision you're making, the quality choices you're making are that we know it works. If you go through your life book, and I can tell you, I can say this, and I can make this claim because it's not a product claim. If you, over the next year, get out your life book, write your story, do your evaluation, and then set out on writing your news story, and you go through those 26 elements, and you actually learn and do what it says in them. You work with your coach, you use the feelings, you become fully connected to our community. At the end of that year, the end of that 26 element, when you go back and you do your assessment again, your scores will be higher. You will be healthier. You will have higher well-being. And I'm absolutely 100%, that's what we call predictable transformation. It will happen. So the question is, do you want optimal health? Do you want to be healthy? And if the answer is yes, then that should become a priority. So each one of those decisions, even though in the moment you may not see immediate results. See, that's the thing. It's called the slight edge. There's a guy that wrote a book about it years ago. The slight edge is if you do the positive thing over time, that augments and your life will change. And that's the same thing with your business. If you make those calls, if you get on the celebration, if you get on the Monday night calls, if you talk to people and you start bringing on clients and you turn them on to the transformational system, your business will grow. It'll grow at a different pace for each and every one of us, but for all of us, it will grow. It'll grow over time. So quality decisions are decisions that improve your life. It's so easy to make this. So in the book, I talk about whether you have a salad for lunch today or have a cheeseburger isn't going to make any difference today, that much difference today, but it will make a difference over time. And I've actually augmented in the latest Habits of Health Transformational System, I actually say it actually does make a difference today as well as later. Because if you actually assess yourself in the afternoon, an hour after you've had a salad or after you've had a cheeseburger, you'll be more sluggish if you had a cheeseburger. And that small little change can affect that day. And those days compiled together can make a difference. And clearly it makes a long-term difference. So it's actually moving long-term consequences into immediate situations. So yeah, quality decisions are what it's all about. And they don't have to, see, you're not going to get that positive feedback loop of that great a change. But if you notice, there is a change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and do you want to dig in a little bit more even into that whole, you'd made a reference to Robert Fritz and structural tension. And again, for some of the people on the call, that is going to be like a brand new idea for them. But yeah. I know that for me, structural tension, honestly, in a lot of ways runs my life now, thanks to you and Robert Fritz.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more, like give us a newbie beginner aspect on that?
So just so you know that throughout the Habits of Health Transformational System, the map that we have that we use monthly, all those are variations of the structural tension chart. So structural tension is that when you focus on what you want, your desired outcome, and you know where you are currently, it creates a tension. And this is it's not stress, it's not a negative thing, it's actually a desire. And so what happens is, for instance, if you're going, wherever you guys are today, you need to know what city you're in, and you need to know where you're going. And obviously now it's done by GPS and done by your computer in your car. But the reality is, knowing those two things is important. And if you know that, then there's a series of things that move you forward. So the easiest way to explain, because when I developed along with Helen the 6 transformational habits, the first one, lead from the future, act in the now, kind of sets up the stage for all of it. That's a structural tension chart. Lead from the future means that what do you want for yourself in a year? So, let's just start with the one we've been talking about, optimal health. So if you desire optimal health, you don't have to believe it, but if you could choose. So the question I ask people is not, do you believe you can have optimal health, but if you could choose to have optimal health, would you make that choice? And that's a universal. I could ask 8 billion people on this planet that question, and the answer is yes, they would choose optimal health, especially right now if they're sick with the COVID-19, right? They would love to be optimally healthy right now. And people that don't have it would love to be optimally healthy because they know they're at lower risk. So it's a pretty important thing. And as far as us individually, not everybody wants a Porsche or a Ferrari, but everybody wants optimal health. So it's a universal thing that we're giving to people. But if you want optimal health, and right now, let's say your health is okay, you're in what I like to talk is non-sick, you're not sick, you don't have COVID, you don't have heart disease, but you're 40 pounds overweight and your blood pressure is starting to edge up a little bit, and your glucose is sorry about that. Your glucose is heading up a little bit. All those things are not necessarily good, but what we need to know is we need to know what we need to do. So if you want to be optimally healthy, or let's just make, I'll back it up to a really easy one. Let's say you want to have a party, and right now no one's going to have a party because they're not going to gather a bunch of people. Let's say you wanted to have a party for the 4th of July. Hopefully this will be better by then. So what would you do? Okay, you decide first, okay, what do I want to do? I want to party on the 4th of July. Great. Where am I right now? I haven't done anything yet. So your current reality is I haven't started. So if you did the secondary choices that support having that party, what would you do? You'd make a list, right? Who am I going to invite? You figure out where the venue is. You figure out what you're going to serve. And so all these are secondary choices that support having that party on the 4th of July. And then you list those down, and then you would start working on those. So when the 4th of July came, you could have the party. Same thing, that's what structural tension is about. If you know what you really want, then you'll basically move towards that by creating these choices. If your desired outcome is that you want to be, let's just say you want to be an FIBC by National Convention in July. So if you want to be FIBC, what do you need to do now? What are those secondary choices? Just like what the map is. The map is, okay, desired outcome for the end of the month is this, and this is where you are right now. What are the things I need to do? So what it does is it allows you to focus on, it's another form of quality decisions. What do I want right now? How do I help get what I want right now so that I put myself in position so I can have that desired outcome? So it's a really important piece, because what most people do in this country, and especially right now, it's all about problem solving. And when you solve a problem, you don't create anything. You simply get rid of something you don't want. You don't bring anything into your life that you actually do want.
Well, I think that whole thing, like people will often comment to me when they realize that I've lost a lot of weight and it's been a while, and they'll say, wow, you must have incredible willpower. It's like, no, I don't. That's how I got to 400 pounds. I don't have good willpower, and I'm not necessarily terribly motivated, but what I do have is structure. I know what I want, and you've taught me structure. Structure got me through this week. And for some of you, it's a new idea. Talk with whoever invited you onto this call. They can help you flesh that out a little bit more. Another question, actually, there were a couple other questions that came in that all kind of run together, and they're going to connect back to element 5, Dr. A, talking about environments. And I'm going to give you 2, 3 of them because they all kind of fit together. So one person said, well, how do we deal with friends who seem to want to sabotage our health goal? And I don't think we're allowed to go slap them around. So there's that one. But then somebody else said, yeah, it was similar. What advice do you have for someone whose unhealthy surroundings includes his or her spouse's eating, drinking, and sleeping habits? And then and then somebody else said, how do you incorporate stop, challenge, choose into relationships around you? So I feel like those 3 all fit together.
Yeah, no, they're great. And first of all, for everybody on the line, listen how Shirley knew exactly where to go with that, right? Element 5. There's a whole section in Dr. A's Habits of Health on it as well. What we want to do, we want to empower people. The whole shift between the first Habits of Health and the workbook and now the new Habits of Health Transformational System is I changed the emphasis. What I found was the coaches were taking too much time trying to teach the Habits of Health, and the clients became dependent and weren't as successful as they otherwise would have been. What the new system does is it empowers the client to self-direct their own health. And that's a really important thing. You need to empower people. People are at their best when they have self-efficacy. Once they are at the point where they can control their health and their life, that's when everything changes. So yeah, element 5 really goes over that, but there's a big difference between a friend and an accomplice. An accomplice is someone that tries to reinforce doing the bad things, the things that aren't healthy for you. And a friend is someone that supports you in your journey. So part of that is learning how to deal with that. And that's a great section. So I highly suggest anybody that's that question piques an interest and they want an answer, go read that section, because it really, and then it refers to it in the Habits of Health as well. but there's, I wrote quite a bit on that. If you notice, it's element 5. So if you're doing these elements in the beginning, and literally the first 5 elements up to element 6 are actually mostly about up here. Because if you're not preparing yourself mentally, you're probably not going to be successful. You'll become reliant on the 5 and 1. You'll think that that's the answer. And then when you get to your end point, which is getting rid of what you don't want, your weight, then you will stop and you don't have momentum. If you've been through the first 5 elements, you've been learning those and ingraining those while you're losing weight, while you're, and the reason why I picked Medifast in the very beginning was because it creates that teachable moment. It helps people change so quickly their weight, how they feel, their energy level. It creates that teachable moment where they want more of that. But if they're not learning, so for everybody, for you personally and for your clients and your coaches, learning those first 6 elements are the key to long-lasting success. If that's why on day 1, when you open up your app, I have eating every 3 hours, drinking your water, and stop, challenge, and choose. Those are the 3 most important things, micro habits, and stop, challenge, and choose. When you talked about making choices, having that gap, not sleepwalking through life, those are the fundamental things that we're teaching. And you want to spend your time in the beginning helping your client really get that. Because if they're working on those, by the time they reach a healthy weight, they've got those mastered, because it takes on average 66 days, and they're set up for very, very, very great success. Bingo. And so just getting back to your family, ask them permission. I'd ask them to say, listen, I understand you're not ready to make a conscious choice to change your health, but I am. And if you love me, please support me. And if you don't want to support me, don't sabotage me. And I would, candor in the 5th commitment, and if you're reading the 15 commitments of conscious leadership, the 5th commitment is candor. And candor is critical. Say what you say. It's so important. Candor, being frank, being honest, it's being open, and being willing to say what you feel is really important in life. Don't hide those, and don't be worried about what anyone else is saying. Make sure that people understand that you've made a decision and you're asking for support.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Guys, we've got about 8 minutes left. Dr. A has covered a ton of fantastic information for us. Really, really helpful. Like, how I said at the beginning, get that tablet out. I'm guessing quite a few of you have the tablet pretty full by now. But if you have a follow-up question, either on what he shared or something that you maybe hoped he would cover on this call that he didn't, I think we can probably do this. Just take yourself off mute and we'd love to hear. Actually, Sarah Cope, I'm going to put you a bit on the spot because you had asked the question about the stop, challenge, choose in relationships. Do you want to follow up on that with him a bit? Well,
okay.
Some people I know I can put on the spot, Dr. A. Sarah's a new executive director on our team. We love working with her.
Well, I will say, I think the relationships that are closest to us, those are the ones we're scared of. I know for me, still overcoming operating in fear. Fear has always been a thing for me. So when it comes to people that you love, you're scared of hurting them or offending them or ruining your relationship with them. And so when they hit a trigger for you, how to take that moment. For me, it's been the deep breath, really, even with my 2-year-old, just taking that deep breath and trying to think, what is that desired outcome? Slowing down has been huge for me. But as a coach, that is probably the number one thing I hear from clients. I'm so stressed out. This person just hit my button, so I would just love to hear more of that from you, from the actual guy who wrote the book, on how that works.
Yeah, Sarah, thank you. That's great. And so when I say candor, so it depends on, okay, so let me back up a minute. If you have a really close relationship with someone, building candor will build intimacy in the relationship. And I'm not talking about sexual, I'm talking about just in your relationship, is that the more you can really express that's the deepest level of relational health, is when you can really say versus hide stuff because you're worried what someone else can say. And that's a process, because if they're not studying it, they're probably not going to be ready for it, right? So you have to kind of basically work your way into it. But over time, people appreciate honesty. And when you create that discreet, Abraham Lincoln said it better than anybody. He said, I don't lie because my memory's not that good, right? If you think about it, because if you make up a story and then you got to remember the story beside what happened really, then it gets pretty tough. So the more you can do that. So with your clients, what I always do, and I do this when I'm coaching, I was coaching 2 of our top integrated presidentials the last couple of days. And even though I have very close relationships with them, I always ask the question, do I have permission to coach you? That's a great way to start, right? That way they're giving you permission. If they say no, then don't go there, right? Don't go there. If they're onto something, but especially if I've forgotten. So when I get on a coaching call, I always ask that question. If I forget, we get to a point where I realize that I need to say something here in candor that they're probably not going to be happy with. I asked that question. I said, listen, Sally, we've been talking here. I meant to ask you this earlier, but do I have permission to coach you? And if they say yes, then great, then go there. If they don't, then you might not want to go there. What they're in essence saying then is, I'm not ready for it yet, right? And so, and here's the part, here's the important, when we are deep in our egoic self, the ego is highly aroused, people are not ready to hear anything that's critical. In fact, their ego is almost, if you think about it, it's almost like a parasite in their brain. It's not them. It's actually this sense of self that needs to be protected. And if you say something to them during that period, you're not going to help them, because your goal as a coach is to help somebody, whether it's in your relationship, whether it's with your significant other or your child. Now, for your child, they're at 2 years of age, they are just starting to assimilate their psychological development. They are an emotional creature that's all about self-interest. They have no logical capacity yet. So at that age, you have to realize that you can't ask permission. You're the authority, and you just want to keep them from harm, right? So you set like guardrails or bright lines for them not to go over. And then for you personally, you try to minimize by stop, challenge, and choose your emotional engagement, because when you emotionally get engaged, you lose the logical part, which is, I'm a great mom, and now you're pissed and you're doing something that you don't want to do. So basically, you want to keep this part engaged. So how you do that, stop, take a deep breath, and then challenge yourself. Why am I feeling this way? I know this, I know you know this. I want to be the best mom. I want to get the gold award as the best mom on earth, right? And you're a human. And when they do bonehead things, listen, I have a friend that I remember, he was a cardiac surgeon, and he had 2 twin boys. And when they were 2 or 3, they finally needed a break. So he and his wife were out in the living room. They had closed the door in the bedroom for the 2. They're identical twins, if you can imagine that, at 2. And all of a sudden they were watching TV, and the TV started flickering. And they said, what? They went in the bedroom, in the kid's bedroom, and they had literally pulled somehow the sockets off the wall and had the electrical sockets. Thank God they didn't electrocute themselves. But they're like 2 Tasmanian devils running around. So that's what kids, and especially boys, that's what they do. Girls, hey, listen, I have 2 girls. Wait till they get to high school, and then you'll have the same. You have to stop, challenge, and choose a lot. But the whole point is that you, as you become the author of your own life, realize that you stop when you start feeling that icky sauce. You start feeling, anger comes in the jaw. If you start feeling your jaw tighten, stop, challenge. Why am I feeling it? I want my child to be the best. Same thing as a coach with your clients. My client is saying something really bonehead here, and they're not getting it, okay? But what I want is I want to help them. So if I switch and I start getting emotionally and it becomes about me, I can't do the best job as a coach. So that's really at the essence of what Stop Challenge. It's that recognize there's 5, there's more, but there's 5 pure emotions, and they are anger, fear, sadness, joy, and creative or sexual energy, where it's creative. You want to create something. Those 5, pretty much, those are the 5 main ones. So sense to yourself when you start feeling that I'm starting to, and what is it? Identify it, and then let it go. Because the pure emotions take about 90 seconds to go through your body, and then regain it. Drink some water. That's one thing I love to do. I like, if I'm in a meeting, because usually I get, yeah, there you go. And it's good for you. And when I'm feeling that way, like I'll be in a board meeting or something like that, and somebody will say something which is just bonehead thing to say, I just like to reach across the listen, we have these emotions. We're human beings. We have these. It's not that you shouldn't have the emotion. It's, again, just like this week with the COVID-19. It's not that these things don't happen and we don't respond. Yeah, we're all a little scared about this, but it's how you respond to it. You stop challenging you. So that's how you regain control, because this beautiful area here, this prefrontal cortex, this logical area, the intuition you have as a mom, the intuition you have as a coach, once you re-engage those and they're in charge, you'll make the right decision. Is that helpful?
Thank you. You should write a book. Very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Doctor, I thank you so much for your time. We are right at 1 o'clock, and I want to be sensitive to your time. And I know you'd happily talk to these people all day, but I also want to give you a break to go out and enjoy that sunshine. But thank you again for taking the time today. Guys, I gotta brag on him just a little bit. He had a couple of things to do this week with the company. You can just imagine. But when I said, well, are we still okay for Saturday? And his immediate response is, well, sure, that'll be fine. So thank you for making people your priority and for taking the time.
You're welcome, Shirley. Can I just leave with one thing?
Absolutely.
So yeah, the world is all out. We were talking, Sarah and I were talking about, emotions and how they have a tendency to bring out sometimes the devil in ourselves. Is that right now the world is chaotic. Most people are uncertain. They don't know what the truth is, but what we know is that they need someone to just care about them. And if we're willing to do that, you can help the world become a better place this week. So you guys go out and make it happen. God bless.
Thank you so much, guys. And thanks for taking the time to come join in today. It was delightful to have all this time with you guys. Go make it a great day.